session with questions from the last session, and I did receive a few emails from people throughout the week, so I hope that helped, sending you the information. So the first one, actually, I got a couple of questions that were similar. So I'm just going to attack that one first, and then I'll ask you guys for your individual questions. And some people had asked if it's okay to work a row of single crochet stitches first out of the foundation chain before they work into the pattern, because they were finding that, you know how the foundation chain is so loose and so difficult to try and work into. If it would be easier if they just did one row of single crochet and then went into the pattern. And that's absolutely fine if that helps. And again, because it's a tea towel or a face cloth or whatever you're going to use it for, it doesn't really matter. And that one extra row of single crochet doesn't change the look of the pattern at all. It just gives you like a little bit more of a firm foundation. So that's absolutely fine. And the way I always tell people is think of it like cooking. Let's say you're making pasta sauce and you hate garlic. You can leave that out and it really doesn't make that big of a difference. Let's say you love another herb, you can throw that in. That's not going to make that much of a difference. As long as it's something that's similar to what you're making. I mean, you're not going to make pasta sauce and throw a bunch of flour in there because that wouldn't make sense. So if you're making the tea towel and you want to throw some triple crochets in first, that's going to make a big difference because that's not really consistent with what the pattern's saying. But a row of simple single crochets, absolutely. If that helps you at the beginning, go right ahead. And Deborah, that helps. I found it easy. Yes. Yeah. So that's the thing. When you're first learning, foundation chains are really loose and it's really difficult to work out of. And especially if you haven't really fixed your tension, because a lot of times people are still working with the wrong size hook or maybe the wrong size wool, and your tension isn't quite what it should be. You're going to find it really difficult to work out of that chain. So go right ahead and do a row of single crochet. Okay. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. So ask me anything that you want that you've had problems with the pattern or up until now, and we can go over it.
Can I ask my question then? I'm going to be running in the tea towel. I haven't finished yet, but I'm going to be running out towards the end of my ball of yarn, and I'm going to have to join another ball of yarn. What is the best way of doing that?
Okay, so what you never want to do is tie a knot and keep on going. Because if you tie a knot to your new ball, once you wash it, it's going to work its way out and the whole thing's going to unravel for you. So what I usually do when I run out is I leave a tail of about 3 to 4 inches of the old yarn. Then you're going to grab the new yarn, and I got 2 different colors so you can see, and leave another tail of 2 to 3 inches. And then you're just going to start crocheting with that. So you would put your hook in and you don't even need to do anything. Don't tie them together. Don't do anything. Just go into your next stitch and pick up the new ball of yarn and start working.
And you would do that in the middle of the row, or doesn't make any difference where that happens? Is that?
It doesn't make any difference where that happens, because then in the end, and this is what we're going to talk about next week, or if we have time today, all the little ends that you're leaving when you start your project, when you finish your project, I'm going to show you how to weave them in so that you don't see them. It's going to be seamless. You'll never notice the ends. And you do the same thing when you add a new ball. The only time you need to add at the end of a row when you're starting a new one is if you're changing colors, because you don't want that little jog of color in the middle of a row. So let's say I was changing from the yellow to the red. I want to do that at the beginning. I don't want to do that halfway through, because then I'm going to have a semicircle of yellow and a semicircle of red, which isn't going to look very attractive. Or if you're on a flat piece, you'll have that one color going through half and then another color. So if it's the same color, you can add it as soon as you run out. If it's a different color, always add it at the beginning of the next row.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And don't ever tie it. Remember, don't tie it.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
It's Susan. Okay, so I was on a roll and I've crocheted before, so my tension is pretty good.
Okay.
But this has not been a good week for me. So I put down my crocheting from Tuesday so we could do our Thursday or Friday class, whatever we're doing. Then I picked this up to try to finish it, and look at how tight it got.
Oh, yes.
And
That
it's
can
only
happen.
because I'm stressed.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Sometimes it's
No,
true. It's so true. Your emotions will change your tension. It really does.
So then I stopped doing it, and I'm afraid to undo it and start up again because I don't know. I've just been working on the shawl every day so that it's sort of consistent, but I don't know, maybe wait a couple of weeks. Try it again.
Well, you can pull it back to the point where you found your tension was a little bit better. You can pull back a few rows and just until you find the loop at the beginning of the row.
Yeah.
Because, and this is the tea towel, right?
Yeah.
Because the pattern. Yeah, because the pattern is the same pretty much for every row. Go ahead and pull it back to where you're happy with it. And then try it. If you're stressed today, don't try it. But next time you're all relaxed, you can try and finish it off. But that's an interesting point for people to remember. It's true. Like if you're thinking about something and you're really, really tense, your tension will change, which is, it doesn't seem like it would, but you're holding your hook a lot tighter, you're pulling your working yarn a lot tighter, and it does change your tension a little bit.
Yeah, you don't even realize it. Like it's the 7th anniversary that my husband passed away. And I remember the year that he passed away, I was in Stratford and I was waiting for the show to start. So I was knitting a scarf for Street Knit, which we donated knitted items, and the scarf was a nice width, and I'm knitting away. All of a sudden it got really, really narrow, and it's like I couldn't get the needle through. But it's just I was, my whatever I was working on was a reflection of how I was feeling.
Oh, and you know what, I do see that in classes when I'm teaching in person. I see that people will start out with a pattern and their tension is very, very tight because they're a little bit nervous, learning how to crochet or learning how to knit for the first time, and they're fighting with the stitches. But as the class goes on, their tension relaxes a lot more as they relax and become comfortable.
Right.
So yeah, it really does have an effect.
Okay, well, I took out, it was 8 rows.
You can just work back.
You know what? I didn't even realize when I was doing it. It looked perfectly fine until 2 days later when I picked it up to work on it again. I thought, what the hell happened to that?
We'll just call it practice. You're just practicing. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi Terry, it's Sherry.
Hi.
I was asking you before, I didn't get very far. I was working on the dishcloth and I found that I would do the 25 stitches, and then as I would go towards the second row, that wasn't too bad, but then it ended up as a circle. And I don't know, I increased 1 stitch at the end of the first line, and then the next line I increased 2 stitches in turn, and it just became the same every time.
Okay. So this was the first project, right? The face cloth?
Yes.
Okay. So what I would suggest doing, so I guess you weren't in last week's class.
No, I couldn't.
Okay.
We had an emergency.
Oh, no, fine. No.
Surgery. So.
No, that's fine. Because what I had recommended for last week, and I'm going to recommend for you for this week to try, is instead of going right into the pattern, do a row of just straight single crochet stitches. Okay. And then turn it around and do single crochet with a chain, and then skip a stitch and do another single crochet in a chain, another single crochet in a chain, like it's saying in the pattern. And then on the next row, chain 1, and then single crochet all the way back. And do a few rows so that you can actually see where the stitches are to go in, where your hook is to go in for the stitches. Instead of going right into the pattern, I think that'll help you sort of identify exactly how to make the stitches. So just make maybe 20 chains, and then just keep going. Even if you want to do 2 or 3 rows of single crochet, and then try the single crochet with a chain stitch, and then a single crochet with a chain stitch. And then you can see on top of each other exactly how different they look. And so when you go into the pattern, you'll see exactly where to put your hook to work that stitch out of.
Okay, so when you say to do a chain within the line, like when I'm doing the second line or the third line, to add a chain and then go into the next stitch? Is
Yeah.
that how you would make that
Yeah,
look?
but you'd skip a stitch underneath, because think of it this way. You're going to put your single crochets working out of a single crochet stitch, and then you make a chain stitch, which is actually one stitch. Move over one and work into the next single crochet from the row below. So skip one. Every time you do a chain, skip a single crochet from the row below. And then try that and see if that helps identify the pattern a little bit. Let me just grab, excuse me for 1 second. I actually put this to use and threw it in my shower, the cloth. So I had to go get it from the shower. But you'll see the spaces start to form. I'm going to put it up to the camera. And you see now that this has been used quite a bit. So it's pulled out quite a bit. So you can see where the stitches are worked out of. You'll have a nice big space when you make that chain to make your single crochet. So give that a try, okay?
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Any other questions from the project?
I'm still having trouble getting into the stitch underneath the legs.
Okay,
Like,
so you're still looking for the V stitch, right? On top?
I have the V stitch on top.
Okay.
But then,
so you're gonna, but then what?
I go under the legs and then I end up with 2 on the hook. Is that right?
If you're doing a double crochet, you will, because you're wrapping first around and then you're going into the stitch. So that would give you the 2 loops on the hook, yes. But if you're just looking, see the problem with just putting, so if you just put your hook in under those 2 legs,
yeah,
and you don't grab any yarn, it looks like 2 loops, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you actually have to next grab the working yarn and pull it through, and then you only have 1. So maybe you're not working through the full stitch, and maybe that's why it looks like 2. If you're just pulling up those 2 legs, then it will look like two loops. But you have to then finish off the stitch and pull your yarn through.
Okay, so that's okay. So when I do pull it up the 2 legs, then that it's like 3 on this, and then you like to do a single stitch. If you have it, you have your stitch on, and then you go in underneath the 2 legs, so it looks like you have 3 on.
It does, but that means you haven't worked the full stitch through. Then pull that working yarn through, and then it's only 1 loop on your hook.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just completing that stitch. So remember, when you go into a stitch, you go in, you grab your working yarn, but then you always have to finish off that stitch. And it helps sometimes when you're learning using 2 different colors like this too, because then you can see exactly. So if you finish off a row and you're working back and you're practicing your stitches, it's a good idea maybe to grab a different color, and then you can see whether you finish the stitch off, because the new color is the one that ends up on your hook, just like I'm showing you here. So the 2 legs are in blue, my working yarn is in red, and I finish off the stitch with the red loop on my hook. Okay. Yeah. Alrighty. Okay, so today, were there any more questions before we move on to working in the round? No? You guys good? No. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to work in the round, because you've done lots and lots of practice of working flat. So today's project are the little scrubbies, the rub-a-dub scrubbies. They're so cute. And at the beginning, you guys were talking about size. Lorna, I think it was you that was talking about the size. So I'm going to show you on here. Let me just get my circle. So this is the size it's saying that my scrubby should have turned out to be. It's so tiny, but look how big mine is. Like there's no way I could, there's no way. And I'm using even thinner yarn and a smaller hook. So according to the pattern, it says to use a 5mm hook. I'm using a 3.75mm, and I'm still ending up almost double what they're recommending. So again, because this is a face scrubby, I'm not really concerned about it. It's not something I'm going to be wearing and has to be fitted. So for your tea towels, for your washcloths, don't worry too much about that. I'm going to assume that you guys are going to be practicing a lot with things that are non-wearable, so you can really perfect your tension. But I mean, I've been crocheting for a very long time, and I'm still ending up with something double the size. That's just the nature of different tensions. So if you're okay with that, there's really not much more I can do than go down to, you know, almost lace weight yarn to get something that size. And then you wouldn't want to do that anyway. You want something with a nice texture, a nice hardy cotton, if it is a face scrubby. Okay. Now I'm going to assume that everybody is new to working in the round here. Lisa, I know we tackled it a little bit on Friday's class. We're starting the shawl, but has anybody else worked in the round before? You have, Loretta? Okay. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of different things. So the pattern itself calls for using a magic loop to start in the round. I'm going to put that aside for a minute. I'm going to show you how to work in the round basically by joining a row of chains, and then we're going to move into magic loop. And the reason we're doing it second is because magic loop gives some people a hard time. It's a bit loose. Oh, Loretta's nodding. Yeah, it is loose. Yeah, it's a totally different technique, but it's worth learning. And I'll show you the difference. So this is the first one. This is made exactly as the pattern says. And you see how the center of it is nice and closed? Mm-hmm. And it's like a perfect center. That's with magic loop. This is doing a basic center by closing a group of chains. And see, it doesn't quite close exactly. It's not awful looking, but it's not a perfectly closed loop. So again, if you're okay with that, this is a better way to do a circle if you have a hard time with a magic loop. But I think it's good to learn how to do both types. Okay. So with some working yarn, what you're going to do is you're going to grab your yarn, and we're going to make 6 chain stitches. Okay, so put your loop on your hook and just do 6 chain stitches to start. 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. And then once you have those 6, see where my yarn is on my hook, and this is the first chain stitch that I made. You're going to put that hook into the first one at the other end. So it's sitting like this. So you've got the one that you finished with and the one that you started with, and you're going to wrap that working yarn around and pull it through both of those loops to get a circle. And while you're trying that, I'm going to do it one more time.
Good.
So you make your loop. You make 6 chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is where my working yarn is. This loop is on my hook. This is where I started. I'm going to go into the first one. And don't worry, if it's too tight, the first one, just go into the second one while you're practicing. Again, with your tension, it will perfect over time. So don't worry too much about that. Then you take your working yarn and you wrap it around your hook. And then you draw the yarn through both loops to get a circle.
Both loops to get a circle. Okay.
Okay. How's that? Did everybody get that? Is everybody okay? Yeah. Okay. So now to work out of a circle. So when you're working flat, you're looking for those 2 legs of the V to work your stitch out of. When you're working in the round, you're working into the center of the circle. So just to give you a feel for this, we're not really working on the pattern right now. It's just giving you a little bit of a feel for working in the round. You take your hook and you don't go into any stitch right now. You go right through the middle of that circle and you grab your working yarn and then pull it back out again. Wrap it around and finish off the single crochet. So I'll show you that again. So you don't go into any stitches. You go right through the middle of the circle, grab your working yarn, 2 loops on your hook, wrap around and finish off the single crochet. So try that all the way around the circle. Try maybe, 10 to 15 of them. Right through the middle, grab your working yarn, come back out and finish off your stitch. And I'll put this as close to the screen so you can see what I'm doing while you're working. Right through the middle, grab the working yarn, come back, pull it back out to the outside, and then finish off the stitch. Go through the middle, grab the working yarn, through back up to the top, and finish off the stitch. And you may have to turn your circle around a little bit. Grab your working yarn and finish off. Grab your working yarn and finish off. And once you do enough that it seems like you've come back to that first stitch that you made, the way that you close off a circle, because this doesn't look very neat right now, to close off the circle, you go under the 2 legs of the first stitch that you made and grab the working yarn and then do what's called a slip stitch. You don't make a stitch, you just pull it through both of those loops to finish it off. So you have a nice, perfect circle. Yeah, that's good, Susan. Nice. Nice. How you guys doing? You want to hold it up so I can see? Nice, that's good. All right, Deborah. Nice. Okay, that's good. And for those of you that are having a little bit of a hard time, I'll start right from scratch again and show you again. I see Diane nodding. Okay, all righty. So we're gonna make a loop, put it on our hook, and we're gonna do 6 chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's the beginning. Or sorry, that's the end where you stopped. Here's the beginning. You're gonna go through that first stitch. You're gonna put your working yarn around the hook and you're gonna pull through both of those loops to make your circle. Then you always go through the circle. When it says work out of the first round, you go right through, throw your hook right through, grab the working yarn, bring it back out again, wrap it around and finish off that stitch. Go through the circle. So you're always bringing the working yarn, you're grabbing it from through the circle, but you're always bringing it back up to the top to work on it. How's that? Okay. So this gives you, if there's a little bit of a center, there's always a little bit of a hole left with this type of working in the round, because think of it this way, if there wasn't a gap, you can't possibly work through that center to make the stitches. So most granny squares start like this. There's always like a little center stitch left, a little center hole. But when they want you to close it off, that's where the magic loop or magic circle comes in. So if you guys are okay with this.
Can you just show me again how to attach once you've finished your circle to start the next row? Sorry.
Absolutely, no problem. Let me just make a quick, because I pulled mine out, so I just want to. I just want to go across. No worries. No worries. Just let me go quickly and make a circle. Get over to that side. Okay, so you go into your first stitch, so under the 2 legs of the first one that you made, and this is called a slip stitch, where you grab the working yarn and then you just pull it through everything that's on your hook.
Both of them.
Everything. Yeah. You don't work a stitch, so you're not wrapping and working a stitch. You just wrap it around and pull it through everything on your hook. Okay. And that closes it off. So that's when they say make a slip stitch, that's exactly what you do.
Okay.
Okay. So now comes the tricky part. I'm going to pull it out again, and we're going to try working the magic circle. And once I show you this, if you're not happy with it, for me, I'll be totally honest with you, it probably took me 2 years to be completely happy with making the magic circle. I used to do the working in the round exactly as I just showed you. And I always found it so loose. And maybe it's because I'm a loose crocheter that I had a harder time doing this. So if you have a hard time, don't worry about it. Just make the circle like I showed you. Okay, but we'll practice it anyway. We'll practice because it's a really nice technique. So you don't make a loop on your hook like you normally do. So you don't do this. What you do is you pull maybe about 10 inches, 10, 12 inches, okay? And you wrap the yarn around your hand so it's nice and loose. So you have about maybe 4 or 5 inches on here on the end, and then you have your working yarn just running here, okay? And then to work your stitches, make sure, so for people who are right-handed, your working yarn is coming out of the right side and that tail is off to the left side. So just turn it around so it's oriented properly. Okay? And now what you're going to do, and this is where it's kind of loose and a little gangly. What you're going to do is you're going to put your hook through the center. Okay? You're going to take that working yarn and we're going to do 3 chains. And you don't really have anything to anchor it to. So the first one is very, very loose, but just pull it through. So I'll show you that again. It's all hanging down here. It's all hanging down here. Put your hook through. I try and put a little bit of pressure on the string that's here. Just a minute, please. Robbie, I'm, yeah. My husband's working from home. Just turned something on, so. So you want to do the loop. I try and put a little bit of the pressure here so I can grab the working yarn and just pop it through. Okay? And then once you do that, then you can work the other 2 chains normally as you would. It's just that first one that's really, really difficult. Okay, I'm gonna do it again.
Can you show us? Thank you.
So I'm gonna wrap it around, okay? You're gonna put your hook through. You're going to just make 1 chain going through. And then you can make further chains from that. So 1, 2. See how gangly it is even looking at it? Wrap it around.
So 3 chains?
Do 3 chains, yeah. I'm just doing it multiple times here so you guys can watch, but you're doing 3 chains and then stopping. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And you always have to remember that you're going to keep your yarn sitting where it's supposed to be sitting there. So this looks really loose and really funny right now, but it will work out. So then what I want you to do is I want you to start working double crochet stitches into this circle, okay? And we have the circle here. So double crochet stitches, remember, you wrap your yarn around and you go in, grab your yarn, wrap around, and take off 2 groups of 2, and take off 2 groups of 2. And just keep going through that circle. Sorry?
Where is your tail end?
So your tail is just sort of hanging there now.
So
It's just hanging. You're not catching it, and you don't want to catch it because this is actually what you're going to pull to close that circle up nicely. So once you do that first one, how gangly that first one is, after that, ignore your tail, just let it hang here, and we're working around this circle now. This is my working yarn, and I'm gonna work out of this circle now, okay?
So the tail is now on the right-hand side?
The tail is on the right-hand side, yep, yep.
Okay.
Yep, it does flip like that, yeah.
Okay.
So my working yarn is on the left side now. and just keep going in and making double crochet stitches. You won't really see where they're going to join because they actually don't join on this one yet. So just make maybe 10 stitches into the center circle, and then I'm going to show you what happens, okay? So wrap your yarn around, go through that big circle, and see how I'm holding it open? I've got some tension on it to hold it open to work with it because it's quite big. Wrap around, go in.
I can see why this took you 2 years.
And
Oh my
you know
God.
what? Like I said, because I'm a loose crocheter, it never looked right to me. So I kind of gave up. I hate to admit that, but I gave up a little, and I just started making them, you know, the regular way. But when I figured this out, then I really liked it. So
I looked at that, learned how to make a magic circle video on YouTube. I don't know how often I looked at that thing.
it is one of those things that's just, it's one of those procedures that it takes a while and a lot of practice to get it down. But once you get it, you'll really like it. So I'm not going to finish off a lot. Keep going and make as many stitches as you want. And I'm just going to show you. So here, this is also why it's hard to do. See how ugly those stitches look? See how loose
I
they are?
know.
Like they're not consistent. There's nothing.
No.
That's why I stopped too, because I thought, well, there must be something I'm doing wrong. But it's like magic. That's why it's called the magic circle. So when you pull that tail, watch what happens. Oh, look how nice those stitches look. I'm going to take it off my hook. They became consistent. Now I don't have a circle because I didn't finish it off, but I have a semicircle. And pulling that tail pulls everything together and perfects the tension. So once you have enough that you think you can really see the stitches, give the tail a pull and draw them together. Okay? And then you can show me what you're working on, what yours looks like, if you want.
Pulling. I'm about to pull, except this is all.
Okay, it worked.
Just show the first one again. How to do the
Oh.
first stitch.
Sure, absolutely. Oh, Deb, that's good. Looks good. It worked. Yay.
Carrie, did you start in the 3 loops that you made? I'm having, did you start in the 3 loops or did you start into the big loop first? Like
So
when
I
you
did
make
the
your
3
chain.
I just did the 3 chains so it would be the height of your double crochets, and then everything else is worked out of the circle. So I'll start it again. I'll start it again. So I'm going to wrap it around and get this nice circle here, and take my working yarn, and I'm going to make 3 chains. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I've got my 3 chains pointing up, and I've got my big circle here. And then from that point on, you're going to be working the stitches into the circle. So this is where you have to put a little tension on your working yarn, and you have to put a little tension on the circle so you can actually work out of it. And then to make your double crochet, we're going to wrap and then go right in the middle of that circle, grab your working yarn and come back out again. Okay, and then wrap and take off 2, and wrap and take off 2. And then do that as many times as you want until you think that you'll see enough stitches to see what you're doing here. So again, you wrap it around, you go right through the middle of that circle, grab your working yarn and pull it out, wrap and take off 2, and wrap and take off 2. Okay, so wrap around, right through the middle, grab your working yarn, pull it out. Wrap, take off 2, wrap, take off 2. And then just keep going until you pull, until you're ready to pull the tail and see a circle. Oh, Lisa, that looks good. Good.
You see that?
And then you
Okay.
just
Oh,
do the slip stitch on the
oh, there we go.
That's right.
Oh,
Diane,
there's-
yeah, perfect. So you just do your slip stitch and join it into the round. So you go into the first one under both legs. Let's see, Lorna. Good. Good.
I was doing singles, sorry.
That's okay. Singles,
There.
doubles, no matter
good.
what you do, just to get the hang of it. Okay, Diane, look, that looks good. Looks good. But it's one of those things, you can find a lot of videos that will show you. I know you get links to this, and I've done it a few times in here, so you can rewatch the video or call up different techniques to do it. And as long as you keep it loose, and you can check too. This is one thing when you're first learning, to make sure you're going into the circle properly. Every couple of stitches, just give your tail. See how I'm shortening my circle there. So I know I haven't trapped anything. I know I'm on the right track here, so I can keep going. So then I just pull it back out and I just make the circle larger again. But if you are concerned that maybe you're not making it into the circle properly, just test yourself. Just to go like this and go, okay, I'm on the right track, and then pull it and keep going. Okay. And don't ever worry about losing your hook. This is pretty stiff. It'll stay there. If you're worried about it, like we talked about last week, just throw a stitch marker in and then test your circle. Okay. All righty. So at this point, you can do whatever you want to begin the pattern, because we're going to work the pattern in the round. So if you're happy with this, you can keep going with the magic loop. If you're really not that happy with it, then you can go ahead and make a row of 6 chains and then join it into the round, and then we'll work the pattern. Okay. So to begin, the pattern is the exact same way that we just did the magic loop. You do your chain 3 and you work 15 double crochet stitches into that loop. So go ahead and try whichever one you want to do. Do your magic loop, chain 3, and then we're going to do 15 double crochet stitches, or chain 6, join it into the round, chain 3, and do your 15 double crochets. Okay, whichever way you want to do it, whichever way you're most comfortable to do it. So I'm going to do it the magic loop way. So I'm going to do my 3 chains. 1, 2.
I'm going to cheat.
3. Are you going to use the one you just did?
Yes, I'm not unwrapping it all the way. I am cheating. I'm such a cheater.
That's okay.
Well, I thought it looked pretty good, so I'll just like to keep going.
Okay, so we're just going to catch up with you here, and we're going to do...
Oh, no, I'm far behind.
Oh, okay. The reason that you do 15 after you do that chain 3 is that the beginning of this pattern is 16 stitches. And do you remember we talked about sometimes in patterns they'll say counts as or works as. So the first chain 3 stands in for a double crochet. So there's actually 16 by the time you're done, because you have your chain 3 and your 15 double crochet stitches.
Right.
Okay.
So that's 6.
So when you do the 3 stitches after you've done the 6, that's a circle. Do you just go in, do the 3 stitches into the circle?
Yeah, so I was working on magic circle here, so I'll show you the method you're doing. What you do is, to make the other way, let me just catch up here and do my 6 chains, make a circle. So if you're going to do it that way, you're going to join it with your slip stitch. You're going to do chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to make the 15 double crochets right out of the center after that first chain 3. So you're going to wrap around first, you're going to go into the center and grab your yarn, and then you're going to work the double crochet. So you wrap, take off 2, and wrap and take off 2. And you'll do that 15 times into the center.
Okay,
So wrap your yarn first.
It doesn't look like it's working.
Okay. So after you do, after you do this The 6. Then you do a slip?
So after you do the chain 6, are you working the first method we tried?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you do your row of chains.
Yeah.
And it's like a slip stitch, exactly. So you work into the first stitch, and then you take your working yarn, wrap it around, and pull it through both of those loops, just like a slip stitch, exactly. I'll show you one more time. Go 6 chain stitches. And then you take your hook, you go through the first loop, wrap your working yarn around, and pull it through both of those loops. Okay?
And then
And then you work, and then you're going to work 15 double crochet. You're going to chain 3 first. So do 3 chains, and then you're going to work 15 double crochets out of the center of that circle that you have. And then when you get to the end of the 15, you're going to close it off with a slip stitch. Okay. So I'm just going to make some stitches here because I want to show you there's a new stitch we're learning today called a puff stitch. So I want to catch up to you guys so I can show you how to work a puff stitch around. And feel free if you have any questions to keep asking while we're working through this.
– 15 stitches doesn't close all the way for me. Is it all right if there's still a little teeny tiny hole?
Oh yes, that's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Because I'm pulling and it's not coming any tighter.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, now I do my slip stitch to close it. Pull that through and pull that through. Okay, I think I'm ready.
Oops.
My puffers.
My yarn is very slippery today. It keeps slipping off my hook while I'm trying to catch up. So sometimes that will happen. Cotton sometimes with a metal hook is a little slippery. That's one thing that to play around with. Like as you get more experience and you want to try different types of fibers and different types of hooks, if you find that it's slippery, I'm using this one just because it's the right size for me today, but I would, if I was working a piece and I'm having this much of a hard time it's slipping off my hook, I'd switch to bamboo, because bamboo hooks tend to grab the fiber a little bit better and hold it. This is what I'm working with, is called a mercerized cotton. Is anybody familiar with what that is?
Mm-mm.
So if you look at basic dishcloth cotton that's sold at like a Michael's or something like that, it's kind of rough. It doesn't have a shine to it. It's a basic workhorse cotton that you would use for dishcloths and things like that. Higher quality cottons that you would make a nice t-shirt or something else with, they do a process. It's called mercerized cotton, and it makes it softer and gives it a nice shine. So anytime you see a really, really shiny, soft cotton, that's usually what it is. And it's lovely, lovely to work with. It's almost like a bamboo texture after, but it's very slippery. So for working a big piece, I would tend to grab my bamboo hooks or my wooden hooks. I have some birch ones as well. And it just grabs right onto the yarn, and I never lose it after that. So bear with me with my slippery hook showing you this today. All that being said.
So this is what I've come up with so far, Terry.
Let's see.
Looks like a bowl. Here's the
So
front.
Okay, so your tension, it might be your tension. Just pull the loop that's on your hook a little bit and pull your
Mhm.
hook out. Pull your hook out now, just so you have a lot of
Okay.
slack on that. And try and open up the circle a little bit. See if it's going to open up for you. How's that? It might just be your tension, actually, what you're working on. So you can keep working out of that as long as you can see. Can you see the top of the stitches?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you
It
can
looks
keep
like a mess.
working.
Yeah. Okay.
So if your tension is tight, it will start curling up and
Okay.
looking like a bowl. So don't worry about that. You might just have to work with the size of hook. You might be using a smaller size than is recommended for the yarn that you're working with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, working flat, your tension looks a little bit better working flat. When you start working into the round or making shapes, that's when you know that you may have a problem with your tension. And that's the other reason I wanted to do this pattern as the third one, because for anybody that's questioning what size hook, what size yarn they're using, you're really going to see it with this one, because we're working in the round and it's drawing those stitches together. And if your tension is too tight and you need to change your hook size, you're going to see it a lot better here than you would on a flat piece. Okay, so if you guys,
Can I ask a quick question? When you're saying it's the hook that's recommended for the yarn, is that usually when, you know, on the yarn ball, there's that band that says that swatch, and they'll say do X number of stitches for 4 inches on a 4.5. And so that
exactly,
means 4.5 would be the recommended needle for the yarn. Is that right? What you meant by that?
exactly, yeah. On the ball band, they always have that information, and that's sort of playing to the middle of the road crocheter. So anybody who is bang on with their tension would use that size hook. And then once you start getting used to what your tension is, you have to adjust your size according to that. So if you're a tight crocheter, instead of a 4.5, you'd go up to a 5 or a 5.5. If you're a loose crocheter, you would go down a few millimeters. But the ball band recommendation is for the standard crocheter that has the right tension. Okay.
Okay. So I went up to a 5 millimeter hook.
And it opened up?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, so it did look like it was a little too tight. I can't see exactly what size you were working with, but it looked like it was a little bit too small there. So that's perfect. Okay, so for
Okay.
those of you that have finished your circle, did you pull it? And
Yeah.
your work? Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna pull mine here. And the next row, we're working puff stitches. So what a puff stitch is, it's just a multiple of stitches in one stitch to make it look nice. Oh, no worries, Christine, no worries. Christine just joined us late and she's saying sorry she was late, so that's no worries. A puff stitch is working multiple stitches out of one to make, it looks almost like a rosebud when you're done. So I'm going to show you up to the camera. So these ones here are the puff stitches. Okay. So we're in the round and we're going to go on to the next part. So for the puff stitch, I'm just reading off the pattern if you have the pattern beside you. So it says work a puff stitch into each of the 16 stitches in your round. Okay. Now here, it's not exactly telling you what a puff is, but if you take a peek at the pattern package, the link that you were given, all of the definitions are at the back. So it does give a definition of what a puff stitch is. So basically what you do, and you can take a look at the full definition when you're done at the back. Christine, we're working on the Rub-a-Dub face scrubby.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so for a puff stitch, you wrap and you go into the next stitch. Okay, so that's under both legs when you're working in the round, and you draw up a loop. And see how I have 3 loops on there right now? Do it again, wrap around, go back into that same stitch and pull it up. And now I have 5 loops on my hook. Do it again, wrap it around, and go into that stitch again and grab the working yarn. And now I have 7 loops on my hook. So I'm not working it, I'm just making 7 loops.
Okay, 7. I've actually done it.
Wrap it around one more time, pull it through all 7 loops, and you might have to wiggle your hook like I'm doing there because it's a little bit tight. And then you're going to close it with a chain. And that's what it looks like. And we're going to do that 16 times all the way around. So I'm going to repeat it again in the next stitch. So here's my next stitch. So wrap your yarn around, go into the next stitch and pull up your working yarn. 3 loops on your hook. Wrap it around, go into the stitch, pull up another one. 5 loops on your hook. Wrap it around, go into the stitch and pull it up again until you have 7 loops on your hook. Then you're going to wrap it around and pull through all 7 and then do a chain stitch to close it off.
Right.
Okay, and you're going to do that all the way around the circle. And see how it's nice and puffy? That's exactly why it's called a puff stitch. You can also count them. So you need 7 loops on your hook and you know you're starting with 1. You can also do it this way. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
It's 3, right?
Oh, I didn't do a chain. I have to do a chain in between, right?
You have to do a chain in between because that actually closes it off and draws it together to be a nice little puffy stitch.
Didn't do that. Do a chain.
Okay. Any questions?
I'm not getting
To get it through. Would you just repeat the second way you did it, please?
Absolutely. So before I was counting, I went 1, 3, 5, 7. So this one, so you know exactly how many loops. That's 1 because it's already on my hook. This is 2 because I wrap it around. I go in, grab 3. This is 4, go in, I grab 5. This is 6, and I go in and grab 7. So I'm just counting them separately instead of in groups of 2. And then you wrap around one more time and you pull it all the way through and you chain 1. Before I was doing it this way, I was doing wrap around and grab a loop. So I have 3, wrap around, grab a loop, 5, wrap around, grab a loop, 7. So you can count them either way. You can count them by 2s or you can count them individually.
Thank you.
So you finished the 7 and then you
wrap it around one more time and pull it all the way through. And then you do a chain at the top to close it off, and it draws everything together.
hard to pull.
Okay.
And I'll just keep doing
my yarn through the 7, I'm catching something else inside. Do you think because I'm doing it too tight, should I relax the stitch a little?
Yes, and that's why I was saying sometimes you have to wiggle your hook because depending on what yarn you're using too, some yarn is very splitty, and when you're pulling through that many loops, you can easily grab a piece of fiber from one of the loops and it gets stuck. So what you can also do, I'll show you if you're having that problem, is let me just get the 7 loops on my hook and I'll show you here. What you can also do is before you wrap around, take those 7 and just give it a tug. See, I'm pulling up and I'm opening them up a little bit more, then wrap around and then see how fast it slides through. Yeah, you can do that too.
Oh, when I did it, it was very tight. And I'm just trying to loosen it up right now.
Let's see. Yeah, it's a little bit more loose than the first one you showed us. Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Yeah.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
I would wrap. I would wrap. So I have
Two,
go
yeah.
in.
Grab the third one, pull it through. Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, now wrap. That's your fourth one. Go back in
Okay.
to the same stitch
Okay.
and grab your fifth one, pull it through. Wrap again, that's your sixth one. And go in and grab your yarn, and there you have 7 loops on your hook. Pull it right
Awesome.
through. Yeah, there you go.
And now I wrap and I pull it all through.
That's, well, you pull that seventh loop through first, and then
Yes.
wrap and then pull it through. Yeah. And then wrap and pull through all 7. And for you two, I'm watching you. It's a little bit tight there for you. So maybe give your stitches a tug and then wiggle your hook through. That's where these ergonomic hooks are easier for doing tight work and working in the round, because it manipulates better in your wrist too. So when you're working with splitty yarn, sometimes you have to move that hook and point the hook downwards to pull it through, so that you're not grabbing fiber. Yes, Christine, this is being taped, so you can catch up after.
So
yeah.
Is this how it's supposed to look?
Yeah, so you're doing your
Really?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're
Thank
going to
you.
go all the way around. You're welcome. So you're on this round here, you're making these puffy stitches. And again, like Sherry was having a hard time before because of her tension, if you find that it's pulling up and it's like a little bowl, you know that you have to change your hook size, and you have to go up in hook size because your work is way too tight. Okay.
So now after I've pulled through the 7 stitches, do I just do a chain to close it off?
You do a chain to close it off, and then you go into the next one.
Okay.
So you're going to do that 16 times. And then when you get to the end, you're going to close off your circle with a slip stitch like you did before. So give me a shout out when you guys are done, and we'll move to the next part. But if anybody wants me to repeat the puff stitches, I can keep going while you're working.
Yeah, you can repeat it.
Okay. All righty. I'm going to put it up to the screen. I wrap. 3 loops, wrap. 5 loops, wrap. 7 loops. Wrap around and pull through, and then do a chain. So I'm just going to keep working around here, and then shout out if you have any problems. That's the one thing to keep in mind too. If anybody was reading this pattern and they wondered why they didn't give a definition, because even puff stitches, for every pattern, there's a little bit of a different definition, how to make them. Always take a look to see if there's a key or a legend or anything at the beginning or the end of the pattern that you're working on, because they should always give you a description. And for this, sorry, go ahead.
2, 3, 4, 5. I count every time to make sure I have 7 before every single time.
That's good. That's okay. That's okay. Do you know what they say about counting when you're knitting and crocheting, and all the counting that you're doing and all the repetition that you're doing? Is it actually has been proven to fight Alzheimer's disease. So I always say I'm fighting dementia or Alzheimer's while I'm counting. So I just keep counting every stitch I do.
Okay. That's great.
Good for the brain.
This uses a lot of yarn.
It does. I don't know if we talked about it in this class, but I usually tell people, so are any of you knitters? Or
Yes.
no?
Yeah.
Some of you are knitters? Okay. So when you start to crochet, crocheting for the same size project uses over 1.5 times the yarn that a knitting project uses.
Wow.
Yeah, crochet eats a lot of yarn. So that's where, if people do knit and crochet, that's sort of the debate that they have. We have people always asking, you know, what's better? I have to make a baby blanket really quickly for a shower I have to go to. What's better, knitting it or crocheting it? And it's always a decision of time or money, really, because crochet is much faster, but you're going to end up buying a lot more yarn to make that same size blanket. So always keep that in mind, that you're going to use at least 1.5 times more yarn for a crochet project. And it's just simply because of, you can see how much larger and more textured a crochet stitch is than a knit stitch. So you're wrapping it so many times, it's actually eating that yarn as you're going.
So okay, so I'm up to 4.
Okay.
And so do I wrap it again before I go into the same hole?
So how many loops do you have on there?
I have 4.
4. So wrap it again and then go in the next one.
Okay. 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay.
Okay, and then you wrap around and pull through all 7.
Are you making 15 or 16 puffs?
So you're making 16 because you made 15 double crochets, but you also had a chain 3 at the beginning. So that equals 16 stitches. So you're going to be making 16.
I only have 15. I gotta find a 16.
If it's so, for sometimes when people make the chain 3, it's a little bit tight and you can't see a space to make the 16th one. Just throw it in whatever space you can find in between the last and the first. Don't worry about it. I did that with this one, and when you're done, you can't even see that there's one that's just jammed in there.
Okay, I'll find a spot.
And then again, you're going to do a slip stitch, and the way that you're going to finish this off is you're going to finish it to the top of the very first one that you made. Wrap your working yarn around and then pull it through both stitches just to finish it off with a slip stitch. Oh, that looks good, Susan. Nice, very nice. See, now yours is coming out large like mine. Oh, nice, Deb. Very good.
Big though.
So if you guys want to switch to gallery view for just a second, you can see each other's work, and hold up your work to the screen, and just so you can see the different, all of your different tensions. Look at that. Look, they all look great, but they're all different sizes. No, that's okay. Whatever you have done, just to see the sizes. So Deborah, your tension is quite loose. Look how nice and big yours is. And then Deb, yours is quite tight. See how everybody's tension is very different? Susan, I would say yours is probably very close to mine. My tension. Lorna, that looks great. Loretta, that's great. Diane, Sherry, you're coming along. That looks good. Everybody's doing a really good job. So even though your tensions are all different, your pattern looks exactly the same. Just some are tighter and some are looser. So you're doing a great job with that. So
Great.
now what you're gonna do now that you finish that off is you're gonna chain 1. And it says in the pattern that this is your turning chain. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that before we go into the next step. So for working flat, you know how you're always crocheting right to left and then you turn your work, and then you crochet right to left and you turn your work. Sometimes when you're working in the round, it will tell you to chain 1 and then you flip your circle over and you go the opposite direction. Then you chain 1, you flip it over, and then you go the opposite direction. For this, I worked up quite a few samples. I didn't turn my work. This one here, it actually looks better if you just keep on going in the circle. So if you don't finish off your work with a slip stitch and chain 1, and you just keep going around in a circle, you'll get something that's the shape of like a snail shell. It'll just keep going and going, and there's really no end to that. But because this one, they tell you to put a slip stitch, to join it, to chain one, you don't need to turn it. You can just keep going around because you've got that height preserved, and it's a nice perfect circle. So just keep going in the same direction. I wouldn't turn it around, and that way all of the stitches are facing the front, and you get a nice, better, like a nice looking texture to it. If you turn it around, then you're changing the front of your work, if you think about it that way, because then you're working, putting the next row of stitches facing towards the back. So for this, I would just keep going around and around and around instead of turning it. Okay, so you're going to do one chain stitch, don't turn it, and you're going to work 32 single crochets. So the reason you have 32 stitches is you have 16 puff stitches that you made, and that chain that you made on the top to pull it together, that tends to pull to the side when you're working in the round, and that becomes another stitch. So you have 16 puff stitches and 16 chain stitches, and you're going to work a single crochet into every single one of those. So when you work the single crochet into the puff stitch, go into the top of the puff stitch, grab your working yarn, and finish off the single crochet. When you do the single crochet in the chain stitch beside it, go right through the middle and wrap that single crochet right around the chain stitch to finish it off. I'll show you again. So the puff stitch, go into the top and do a single crochet. For the chain stitches, go right through the middle, grab your working yarn, and finish it off.
I'm so far behind, I'm never going to catch up.
That's okay. This is being recorded so you can watch it over and over again.
Is our very first single crochet going to be in a chain or in the puff stitch?
In a puff stitch.
Oh.
Okay, I can do that.
Got about.
I always start at the wrong place. That's what my problem is. I can never figure out where to start and end these things. I think that's.
Oh, yeah. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go take a look and just go into the first stitch that you see.
Okay.
Where your working yarn's coming out of, go into the next stitch over. And it should be a puff stitch, because think of it this way, because you do a puff stitch and then a chain, and then a puff and then a chain, and then a puff and a chain. So the first one would be a puff stitch because you finish that off with a chain. So that's the second stitch. So I think we've actually gone over here. I think it's almost 12:45, but that's okay if it's okay with Boomerang, if we go on a little bit more. After that, let me talk about the next round while you're working on this round. Oh, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay. So the next round is an increase round. And what you'll find, even if your tension is right, you still will find in this round that it's curling up a little bit. So that means that we've run out of space because we haven't really increased that much at this point. What we need to do is we need to increase our stitches to flatten out the work. And if you see patterns for bowls, for crocheted bowls, what they do is they do a nice flat piece, and then to get that bowl shape that's nice and round, they just work around and around and around, and there's no increases. It just builds up those sides. But for this, you want it to be nice and flat, so we have to increase with the next round. And the way that you increase in crochet is every once in a while you do 2 stitches in one. Okay.
No, not okay.
Not okay.
I'm lost.
What's happening? Are you which
Well,
part are you on now?
I just finished my 16th puff stitch, so
Okay.
I'm way behind.
Okay, so now you're going to finish that off with a slip stitch.
I did.
Okay, so then you're going to chain 1.
Chain 1.
Yep. And then you're going to work single crochets into every stitch. So that means a single crochet into the top of every puff stitch and
Okay.
a single crochet into every chain stitch. And I'll show you again here what I was doing. When you do a single crochet into the chain stitch, so the puff stitch is easy enough to go into the top of the puff stitch and do your single crochet. When you get to the chain stitch, there's a little space between your puffs. Put your hook right through the middle and do it right through that space.
Okay, right through the middle. Okay.
Yeah, and you're doing that 32 times.
I shouldn't have wrapped. Oh, I shouldn't have wrapped. Just a
No,
single.
you're doing single. That's right.
Single
You're doing
crochet.
singles. Exactly. So now you are on this part of the pattern. So you did your puff stitches, and this is the row of single crochet after. Okay.
I think I got it. Okay. In the hole. In the hole.
Oh, Lisa, that's beautiful. That's great. And Deb, oh, that's great. Perfect. You guys are really getting this. Okay, so for you guys that have finished that off, then you're going to do an increase round. So chain 1 after you join with a slip stitch. And the pattern says you're going to work 9 stitches in single crochet. So for the first 9 stitches, just do a single crochet into the single crochet from below. For the 10th stitch, put 2 single crochets in there. That's going to increase it a little bit for you. And then repeat that again. Then do 9 single crochets across around the circle. And for the 10th one, put 2 in there. And then you work to the end of the circle. And that puts 2 extra stitches in there that will help flatten that work down. So you're going from 32 stitches to 34. And it's not a big increase, it's just 2 more stitches, but it does help to pull it down and make it nice and flat at this point.
It's getting better.
Good, good.
See?
Oh yeah, that looks good. Very good.
Getting better.
Very good. See, it's just practice, 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 practice. So what you can do after we're done here is just keep making these little guys and try the difference between the magic circle. If for those that have the magic circle down, magic loop down, perfect. But if you did the 6 chain stitches and worked out of the center, try a couple with the magic loop and see if you like the difference in the look. So I have a few more minutes. I actually have to start wrapping this up because my husband's also working from home and he has to make some client calls. So he's on hold right now waiting for me to finish. So let me ask you guys if you have any questions before we finish up here.
So when you finish that last row, adding the 2 additional stitches, that's it? That's the end of the...
That's the end, yeah. And then you finish it up. You do a slip stitch to finish it off, and then leave them. So this is your homework for next week. Do a few of these and leave all the tails hanging, because I'm going to show you next week how to finish off your work. We're going to talk about finishing, weaving in ends, how to block work, and how to do any of the other finishing techniques. That looks good, Deborah. Very nice. And what I'd also like you to do, take a look at all 3 patterns that we worked on and all the stitches. And if you have any questions, write them down. And next week will be about finishing techniques and any outstanding questions that you guys have. I'm also going to, in the chat box, I'm going to give you my Instagram account name, because some of you were asking about a Granny Square class. And the next couple of classes I'm doing with Boomerang are actually quilting and sewing. So they're not going to be crochet quite yet, but I do teach other places. So I always put down wherever I'm doing classes, on my Instagram account. So if you want to take a peek, I know Sherry, you're on there. But if anybody else wants to take a look and see where else they can find classes, it's Sweet Potato with an E Studio. There you go. So that's, if you type that into Instagram, you'll come up with my Instagram account. And it's not personal. It's really just all I put in there are my classes and things that I'm making, but that's about it. So you could take a peek, and I've got a bunch of things scheduled.
Sweet potato, what?
Sweet Potato Studio.
Yeah.
Deb,
Okay.
you want to do the quilting class?
Yes.
It is going to be, I'll give you a little preview.
Okay.
It's going to be doing quilting English paper piecing style. So doing the shapes where you baste and sew everything together. We're going to be working with hexagons.
I'm a real novice, but I love doing it. So yeah, I want to do that.
Perfect. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So that's going to be up. They'll be up probably very soon on the website. So take a peek.
Do you need a machine for that?